Please note that this conversation is being recorded and will be available for sharing afterward. The idea of having a public conversation about mental health first began by noticing a general decline in the mental and spiritual health of people within our circle of care. As I began to talk to my clergy and mental health professional colleagues, it became clear that these challenges applied to everyone to one degree or another. Our hope in having this conversation is twofold. First, we want to make the reality of mental health struggles more visible and remove stigma about it. And second, we want to share constructive and loving ways we can care for each other. The format today mirrors those two goals. After brief self-introductions by our four panelists, the panelists will take turns responding to our first question, which is, what have you observed recently about the causes and manifestations of mental health strain? After the panelists have had a chance to speak, we'll open the discussion to the audience. If you wish to share or ask a question, please indicate so by sending a chat message to me or by unmuting yourself and asking to be recognized. After the first question is complete, we'll proceed to the second question, which is, what sorts of healthy behaviors might we adopt to cope with the mental and spiritual stress of this time? Again, after the panelists respond, we will open for audience comments and questions. We'll then wrap up with any closing thoughts by the panelists. Since it is our belief that prayer is one of the important tools we have for this or any other time, I'd like to ask Deacon Moore to start us out with prayer and then introduce herself.
Thank you. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
With you.
Let us pray. Good and gracious God, show me how to respond to the challenge of this pandemic that has gone on for so long and shows no sign of ending soon. You alone know when that will happen. Give me the grace to live each day in a way that brings love, not fear, into the world. Amen.
Amen.
Shall I proceed?
Please.
Okay, so my name is Kathleen Moore, and I am the parish deacon at St. John's Episcopal Church. When Michael and I first began this conversation, my comment to him was that I thought that back in March, when we went into this situation of isolation, that we were in a sprint and that we were going to just make the best of it for a few weeks and then everything would be okay, as in back to normal. As it's turned out, we are actually in a marathon whose length we neither know nor understand and cannot predict. And we didn't prepare for that. We prepared for the sprint. We prepared for some shorter period of time when we would just make our way through this and then get back to our lives. And now we don't know when or if we're going to get back to our lives as they were in early March of this year. So my observation as I talk to friends and family and members of our St. John's community is that there are two sort of themes, I think, in terms of how we're experiencing this time. There's a great sense of loss. We have lost many things. We've lost the most obvious thing, we've lost contact with one another. We've lost our ability to move freely in the world. We have lost rituals that we normally take for granted, but which are very important to us. Just thinking about all the students I know who haven't been able to have a graduation this year. People have been getting married under difficult circumstances. And perhaps the worst loss is our inability to acknowledge and experience the deaths of loved ones and the ways in which we would want to memorialize them. And then the other common thread, I think, is grief, and we're all experiencing symptoms of grief. Many of us have issues with brain fog and fatigue and forgetfulness and an inability to concentrate and focus. And all of those are normally seen as symptoms of grief, but we're grieving all of these losses, and we lack the ability to do that together. And I think that's the most important thing that's missing. All of which contributes to challenges to our mental health. Beth, would you like to continue?
Certainly. Thank you for those remarks. It's important to think about this as a big, long race now, and it's become very stressful. I'm Beth Reese. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I normally live and work in Tampa and have had a private practice there since 1992. I came to Tampa to be the clinical director at the children's home, so I still am connected to child welfare and those important issues. And I'm a colleague of Dr. James Edgar, who is on the Zoom today. There are a couple of things I want to pick up on, especially that, with the loss of the structures, we're not as organized as we were. We had routines that got us up and got us out in the morning, places we were going to be. And those things serve very well for decreasing your anxiety. So experiencing an increase in anxiety, we all are having to put in more energy to plan our lives, to think about things. And it was interesting because the symptoms that Kathleen described, the brain fog and those things, are also symptoms of COVID. And I think we've all lived under the worry, am I going to get it? Is my family going to get it? What's going to happen? And the information has been hard because it's changed. And, it's hard to know if what you're doing. I think we all went through a period of time when we were washing the groceries, and we're no longer doing that. But a lot of things, and it is going on a long time. And I think a lot of people that I know, both in my work and in my social life, a lot of people are showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder because the pressure has just been so enormous. And the best way to treat that is conversation, but meaningful conversation, and having people where you get together and you have a focus to talk about what's happening and what this is doing, and to have, because somebody else will say something that's exactly what you need to hear to be able to feel better or change something or think about something a little different. Because under this stress, many people become inflexible, and flexibility is so important now, and you can really work toward that, and that will give you resilience. So I'm bringing up some ideas of what has occurred in our mental, our internal lives, that by talking about this, we really can change it. I know professionally, right at the very beginning, I belong to 2 groups that meet once a month, and we went to meeting every week so that we were always thinking about this and planning for it, and thinking about the different ways to address it with different people. And, you know, children are being very affected by this also. And I think thinking about them, because their lives have, they don't have a sense that, you know, we can get through something. You know, there was at the beginning, there was a little bit of excitement. We can do this, we know how, you know, and it's gotten very tiring. And the kids are really feeling it. And going back to school is full of anxieties for them now. You know, they're sitting at their desks with plexiglass shields around them. You know, it's not the same. And how can you have a 7-year-old not touching everything and everybody? And so it's a lot of stressful things. So for those of you with grandkids, can you see them? Have you been able to, you know, what connections? Because those family connections are so important in terms of our being able to open up our mind and think in different ways, and just creating more space to think about things. Michael, I'm going to pass it on to you.
All
Or
right.
you want me to pass it to James?
I'll go.
Okay.
I'm Michael Cannon. I'm associate rector, an Episcopal priest here at St. John's. Pastoral care, parish life, and outreach are the main areas that I work in. I think we're commenting on that first question, which is sort of, you know, what are we noticing? What is it like now? And what I've noticed is that we've got a kind of a perfect storm of all these outside stressors that have cascaded from the pandemic. You know, we've got economic uncertainty, which means job uncertainty for many. We've got anxiety about finances. Race relations are at a fever pitch. And of course, the political division, which is hyper intensified right now. And they're bombarding all of us. I like that, what you said about it's like we all have COVID. I mean, we all share these stressors together, and they go on top of our normal stressors, the things that we already dealing with, like relationships and personal finance and health. So so we're all overloaded, and the people that I visit with and see are exhibiting a wide range of symptoms, and principal among it is sadness over this loss that Kathleen spoke about. I mean, we could spend hours talking about loss, but let me just highlight a few things, and some of it will echo what Kathleen said. And the loss, the sense of sadness and loss, I think is not something we need to fix. It's just something we need to tend to, because it's natural. And we've lost, I think, our living patterns. The things that we are used to are so different. And that includes our rituals, the kind of rituals that we do here at church, but also the rituals of everyday life, like eating breakfast with a friend on every Tuesday, every first Thursday we do something, and all that. Well, all that's been disrupted. I've had people come into the church and they just look around at the building, and they're very emotional about it. That when they can see some of the connections that are lost right now, there's a very emotional response to it. So we've lost sacred space, we've lost prayer time, and we've lost social connection. And there's also the loss of the sacramental things that Kathleen mentioned, baptisms are now private. Confirmation has been delayed. We have a whole class of confirmands who can't get touched by the bishop. Weddings have been seriously redesigned, and funerals are delayed indefinitely. I've had several conversations with brides who are trying to come to grips with the fact that their wedding cannot be as they imagined it. Another thing that's heartbreaking is to witness the loss of companionship. For instance, nursing homes have been so locked down that family members aren't allowed to visit their loved ones in the nursing units. And physical proximity and touch, have so much to do with our well-being that's now a loss that is affecting our health. And I think I find that separation of families in nursing homes perhaps the most disturbing loss of all. And I've also noticed confusion and irritability. My wife is on the call, so she could say a big amen to that. Confused over calendaring, irritable over almost nothing. And I think for me, it's the loss of routine, the stable places in life that you sort of count on, they'll be there. And it is irritating for all of us that they're not there. It's exacerbated if we're isolated and lonely. People that live alone are especially susceptible to these feelings. There's a general sense of helplessness, and I think we all feel kind of frozen. I feel kind of frozen about what to do, like being held in an invisible vice. People are saying things like, I just wish things would go back to the way they used to be. And people are exhausted. Some can't sleep. Some are sleeping too much. And some like I am, having some very strange dreams. There's some statistics out there that I want to put on the table. The Household Pulse Survey from July 30th gives some indication of the damage that it's doing. 30% of all adults now have symptoms of depression, while 36 have symptoms of anxiety disorder. This is fully a third of the adult population, and 4 times the rate from just a year ago. Alcohol and drug consumption is up, kind of self-medicating, a cheap kind of self-medicating. Domestic violence is up. Suicides, though a lagging indicator in circumstances like these, are happening as well. James, your turn.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm James Riho. I'm an associate rector at St. John's Church in Tampa and the chaplain to the school. A lot of great things have already been said that I won't spend time underlining, but I will share some other pieces of experience as well. As many of you know, I work both with adults and children very closely. And so I wanted to share what I've seen as the difference in the response among adults and the response among children, and some thoughts about that. As we began moving toward the opening of the school year, the experience that I had and other administrators in the school have had is a high anxiety among parents for safety of their children. And with anxiety, a lot of what we would expect, making decisions with a feeling of urgency, a loss of a sense of centeredness, a loss of a sense of, one may say, perspective. And a lot of this is, as several panelists have already said, the desire to go back to the way things were, which implies we know how to negotiate the way things were, but now we're negotiating something that is exploratory and something new. It's a new horizon for us. And parents, as I've experienced them, are very unsure about this. The children, on the other hand, I've seen with our children an incredible resilience. Most of them have been, or all of them had been doing a homeschool experience since our spring break. And coming back to school for them was an incredibly celebratory and wonderful thing. Our children had the option of continuing to school at home or coming into school in person. And about 9 out of 10 have chosen to come in to go to school, and their parents have let them make that choice. And what I've seen is both a very swift ability to adapt to the new, from the way we drink water at school, to the way we eat lunch, to the difficulty of remaining in one room for much of the day, or remaining with a small cohort, to wearing masks. I'm in the middle division, so I'm talking mostly about our middle schoolers now. I have the most engagement with them. They're doing wonderfully with all this. The other thing they're doing is trying to form community every way they can. So any excuse they can find to try to get away from their plexiglass enfolded desk, they will try to take. I had someone the other day in the first row say they could not see the screen. Could they sit on the floor next to their friend? And personally, I think this is wonderful. I think it shows that our need and drive for community, for closeness, for that experience of being in the human hive is so strong that we're driven toward that community, even when our narrative tells us it may be unsafe. And I see that as another type of survival instinct on the soul level, and our children are exhibiting that very strongly. See what else I can add to everything, all the good things that have already been said. I guess one piece, I work closely with and am in communication with a number of people who are kind of on the margins in terms of mental illness, and also in regard to substance abuse and alcohol abuse. And what I've seen here is kind of a bifurcation in that population. Some folks that probably are adding to the statistics Michael talked about are finding it harder to stay within the range of functionality or the range of happiness, and the added social stress. We're all kind of a big family, right? And so the family system really is, as has been said, as if everyone has had COVID. Thank God we've not, and I say that only semi-seriously, but we've all been affected by this in a strong way. And some of these folks have kind of slipped further from normalcy. However, I've also seen that folks who have learned, either because they're managing mental illness or because they have a history of substance abuse and alcohol abuse, that they have tools for resiliency that are keeping them very, very well, probably more well than the general population. And so later on, I know we'll be talking about tools, and working with these folks has shown me the efficacy of such tools, that we really can be well in this situation. And I'll put it back to you, Michael, as our host for the afternoon.
Thank you, James, and panelists, for responding to that first question. Recall that question was, what have we observed recently about the causes and manifestations of mental health strain? So now we want to open it up to anyone and just give a little space for the audience members to share their experiences, anything that they have observed that they just want to bring before the group. So to do that, either send a chat message to me, or unmute yourself and ask to be recognized. Going first is always the hardest thing, isn't it?
Okay, I will. Yeah, it almost brought tears to my eyes what all of you have said. I try not to think about it as much as to what's going on every day. It's been really hard to not be around a lot of my family, because some of the they aren't don't keep as safe as we do. So there's one set that I go see and stand outside, and then there's another one that I can actually go and visit and do hugs to, and you know, that's hard, and not being yeah, around them has been difficult. um, I I found something to bring me light, which is to help an elder couple, which gives me great joy every day, calling them and running around doing things for them, which has been a blessing for me that they don't even realize. It's been something to keep me occupied in a way that I have not. I was kind of just sitting and things were happening around us, but I wasn't moving anywhere, wasn't going anywhere. So it helps to be active with others. I think reaching out, as you know, you and Kathleen and James have said, you know, I mean, I have a neighbor. I haven't touched base with her in over a week. I touched base with my elder people, but not my neighbor. I needed to, because she's all by herself, and I need to do that. And I guess that it brings to light that there are vulnerable people out there, and even myself, you know, thinking about sometimes getting depressed, but you know, I try to hang in there and do other things. But everything you've said is spot on for all of us, for me anyway.
Thank you for sharing, Donna. Anyone else want to share observations or feelings?
I would like to. It's Leland.
Hi, Leland.
Hey, Michael. First of all, most importantly, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. I think it's extremely welcoming and a powerful way to try to establish, like Kathleen had mentioned, Deacon Moore had mentioned, the lack of contact. Well, this in and of itself, just opening up not only communication, but having, you know, a spider web being formed between us on this call itself is wonderful. So I just wanted to start off with just saying thank you to those of you that are on the panel for giving us your time and just saying, hey, we're here. So thank you very much. As far as observations, my job has been greatly affected because I can't get into court. So we do everything via Zoom, and it's extraordinarily uncomfortable for me because I love people. So for me, my best gift is people and advocating for others. And like Donna said, being there for others is where I thrive. So for me to be in a Zoom call and talking to a judge about something is just, it's very difficult for my soul. So I am at a real loss for divorce work, and most of all for criminal work. I'm at a real loss. It's most unfulfilling. Jail visits are unfulfilling. That part is so unfulfilling, that part of my life. I love the idea that the kids are much more resilient. I do think they have been resilient to a degree, but I think I've noticed in my own family, as my sons age, I do feel that they have a lot of me in them, and they have a real need for community. So I love the kids looking for any way to form community. Oh, let me sit on the floor even though I'm on the front row. I love that. So I see that in children. I do miss routine greatly. I miss the routine of breaking bread with people and whatever. And the fact that we can't have memorial service for my dad, it's heart-wrenching. And I love the idea of a marathon where we don't know how long it's going to be. It's just, so I have a lot of ideas for how to work with it and what I do each day, but I do see a lot of pain, a lot of loss. I do see PTSD in a lot of people, clients, family, and just loss. It's just very difficult. So I stay in my garden a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. I think we have time for one more before we turn to the second question.
Could I speak?
Yes, please.
So I guess I liked what you said, Father Cannon, about that you're noticing a lot of sadness, and it's not a matter of fixing it, but tending to it, and having, gone through periods of life where there's been grief, losing people to death in pretty sort of wrenching ways. I guess I would say not trying to make a positive out of it, but one silver lining I've noticed is that it seems like everybody's sort of gotten off automatic pilot. And I notice people, passing on the street now, really making eye contact, saying hello. I think that this pain and grief opens us up to one another and makes us more compassionate and empathetic. So as horrific as it's been, and certainly not downplaying the financial crisis and the people not being able to see their families, but I guess the one positive is I think it will bring humanity ultimately closer together, because we are now sharing pain, where before we were sort of just going about our lives. So again, not trying to put a silver lining on it, but just at least noting one silver lining.
Marie, thank you for that. Tanya, you asked to be recognized as well. And I think we have time for one more. Would you share with us as well?
Sure. My current observations, while I didn't think it was going to be a sprint, I certainly didn't think that when I looked at the grocery store with Halloween candy today that, that we'd be here this long, right? That kind of stuff was like, why do they have Halloween candy? But anyway, so because it's September and other things continue to go on. And it's a good reminder that there are things that are staples in my life anyway that will continue to go on. I do miss the inability, or I have an inability right now, to go and visit my family in Maryland. While we have found different ways to communicate and be together, it's not the same as sitting at the table and hugging each other, right? For me. So for me, recently, probably about a month ago, I went into a different level of acceptance. I accepted it, the first level, and then I realized all the equipment I bought for the people to come back to the office, I needed to just go ahead and give it out because they're not coming back anytime soon. And that was a realization for me that this is going to be a little bit longer than we anticipated. And so I went into a different level of acceptance and kind of changed my mindset a little bit. To accept things as they are, not as I want them to be. I don't know what new normal looks like, but I know what today looks like, right? And the longer I hang on to what it was, the more I hang on to the equipment in the office waiting for them to come back, which is not going to happen anytime soon. So that's kind of where I am right now. I have noticed myself sometimes on occasion getting a little snappy and impatient. And that's, time for self-reflection to go and do some self-care, a little prayer and meditation or some exercise or something like that. But I'm a human being, so I got some human problems. So I'm working on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tanya. Well, in the interest of being respectful of the time that we've asked each other to commit today, I think we'll move to our second question. I'm going to restate the question, and then we'll go around the horn with the panelists again. So the question is, what sorts of healthy behaviors might we adopt to cope with the mental and spiritual stress of this time? And I think, Kathleen, why don't we start again with you? You got us off to such a good start last time. I'm sure you can do it again.
Thank you. Well, my initial answer is I really don't know. But I think for me, part of the solution, I think, is something that I think Tanya was alluding to just now, and that is to set appropriate expectations. And so, stop counting the days to whenever the end might come, because I don't know. And sort of think about how can I, within the parameters that are clear to me, how do I make the most of opportunities to see people and to interact with people? And I think what I have learned to do is to just really value those times when we can have, you know, an outdoor, socially distanced, but in-person gathering, maybe around food or just a conversation. And just let that be what it is, you know, the pleasure of interacting with friends or family, and just let it be that. And not keep wishing, you know, that we could sit closer together or that we could go out somewhere. And then, you know, I'm finding myself actually, you know, getting excited about the idea of going out to eat in a restaurant. I don't do that very much. So when I do, it's very carefully planned and it's very special. And I want to just make sure that I enjoy that. And then I think the other thing is just forgiving myself for being frustrated and being irritable and sometimes just being a totally unattractive person because it's a bad day and I just cannot deal with it today. So, you know, maybe I always did that and it wasn't quite so difficult, but I'm trying to do that. Not be so judgmental about my own behavior and my own responses. Beth?
I have to say I was so impressed with the people who joined the panel, not us, but the people from the congregation, with the things that you said and you brought and you shared, because it was so meaningful and so important. And you really began to raise the things that we're talking about in this second question. I heard a lot of resilience. I heard a lot of creativity. You know, I think being able to do something for someone that's in a harder time at this time. I'm doing some pro bono work with first responders. It's the best thing I've done. I mean, it has helped me so much to give support to people who have been under great stress in the ICUs. And I think there's a lot of that we can do, even the, you know, helping out the parents who, as James referred to, have been overwhelmed with protecting their kids, you know, helping them to follow all of this. And I think that we all talked about the ideas of building community. And, you know, like Kathleen was saying, I think the importance of finding some new ways to meet, to get together in person and social distance and share something that's meaningful. And even if it's, you know, trying something new. But I do think we're at a point in this long marathon that we have to think about creative new ways to take care of ourselves. And it's not easy. But I do think I think we're going to walk away from this meeting today with everybody hopefully being able to think about new things. I would be really interested to see if this energizes some of you to try something new or different, or to suggest something, even for this group. So thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Beth. I want to introduce another metaphor. The marathon versus sprint, I think, is very helpful. But I also want to suggest that the social trauma that we're under is almost like a hurricane. The hurricane is going through right now. And when it's over, whenever it's over, it's not really over. There's a lot of cleanup, anyone who's ever experienced a hurricane. So as we think about, you know, how long we might endure, there won't be a quick, sudden lifting at the end of it. And so one of the things that I think is important is to separate the things we can control from the things we can't control. There's certainly some things that we cannot control, like when a vaccine will be ready or the outcome of the general election. But there are many more things, actually, if we think about it, that we can control. And we should put our attention on those in order to rebalance our lives. A rebalancing of our lives of this type in the religious world is what we call a rule of life, establishing the priorities and daily routines of our life. And the good news is that we can rewrite our rule of life. We're not helpless, though many of us need encouragement and support to adjust. Some specific things. First, and this has been raised and it cannot be raised enough, community is one of the strongest things we can do for mental and spiritual health. And we need to rethink how we participate in community. Research has shown, and Ray Stoll will ask me my source, and I'll give him the source on this after the call. But research has shown that the benefit of online Zoom gatherings, like coffee hours online, family gatherings, worship, events like we're having today, are almost as effective as being in person for our well-being. Now, I'm not sure that we all know that, but the thing we're doing right now is good for our mental and spiritual health. And I feel it, and I hope you do too. And the research is showing the same thing. But some, especially our elderly, need to be reached out to by phone or a knock on the door because they don't use technology the way we do. Many of us are learning new technology, but not all of us will. And people that live alone are more vulnerable to depression and need that attention. So community is the first thing. Second is I want to introduce something about pets. I learned in our prep call that pets are finding new homes at a record rate. My source is Dr. Larry Passman from the Humane Society. But pets are a wonderful way to improve well-being. Purring, cuddling, and affection, they calm us down. And caring for other creatures who need our care, are good for us. And also the structure that pets demand in our lives, that's good for us as well. You cannot social distance with your dog or cat. Third is healthy bodies. Healthy bodies can do a lot to improve our mental and spiritual conditions. Exercise and being outside in nature. Even a car drive with the windows down and the air conditioner on can do wonders. Nature doesn't hold anxieties the way we do. So if we go there and sit with nature a bit, then it's going to rub off on us. And I want to read you a short poem from Wendell Berry that I think speaks to this. It's called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I know a person on this call, in fact, who takes her lawn chair outside to people's driveways, invited, I presume, and sits there and visits with their friend from a social distance. I also want to say that walking, even just a little bit, or with a friend, is a really good idea. And the last thing I want to say is that as far as helping others, you know, that we're in the business of helping others as children of Christ, as brothers and sisters in Christ. There was a course I took in seminary on mental health first aid that I found very practical, and it goes by the acronym ALGE, not the kind of algae you get in a pool, but ALGEE. The A stands for assess. Is the person sad in a kind of a normal way, or is it more serious? Might it be in need of medical attention rather than compassionate friendship? That's A. L is for listening without judging. Perhaps the most important thing we are all qualified to do is to listen to each other. The G is for giving reassurance and information. Assure them that they are loved and important, and give factual information if you think it applies. The first E is for encouraging professional help if it's needed. And that's, you know, one of the reasons why there are many things that need professional help, and there are remedies and practices that are appropriate in cases. And we should encourage that help where we see great distress, indications of self-harm, extreme changes in routine and behavior. And we should encourage professional help where appropriate. The second E is to encourage self-help and other support strategies like the ones we've been talking about here today. So I commend algae to you, not for your pools, but for dealing with your friends. James?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, it's so much good has already been said by all of our panelists. I'll add just a few things. I'll never think of algae quite the same again, so thank you for that. Yeah, I think a lot's been said in various ways about kind of the mind, body, spirit connection, you know, in terms of being in nature, in terms of being able to have affection with our pets. Mine is actually, okay, whining right now, there she goes. And I think all that's very important. You know, all of us have a need for human touch. And for those of us who don't have that easy access through either close family members or another means, you know, that can really be felt as a loss and give us some ramifications psychologically. So a clean environment that offers massage or some sort of therapeutic touch could be a great tool for folks, a great resource. Certainly, I'd want to underline the idea of being out in nature. From the bit I've read, one of the things that really does seem to track with our happiness is having experiences out in natural environments. And connecting that to touch too could be being in the water when that's a good and safe thing to do. Being barefooted on the ground or you know, hugging a tree to sound like a hippie for a moment. But these ways of connecting and communing with the natural world can have great effect on us. I find that's true for me. A couple other small things to mention. One thing that I find helpful when I'm having a down day or when the difficulties of what is new seem to be overwhelming is to create in a concrete written form a gratitude list for the day. Say, okay, here are all these difficulties that are going through my mind, and my mind, like every human mind, blows up the negative because we all need to survive. But to balance reality, let me write down 3 or 5 or 10 things that I'm grateful for today. It's a powerful, powerful tool I've found. I'd agree with the ideas of exercise and movement that have been mentioned. And I'll bring up just 2 other tools or resources for folks who may need them. If you or someone close to you is having a lot of trouble negotiating this reality, perhaps losing the ability to be in that kind of middle zone of the bell curve in happiness or in mental health. There are a lot of support groups that can provide the kind of Zoom camaraderie and information that was mentioned by some of our other panelists. One is called NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI. And they provide support groups both for people experiencing some mental distress, mental illness, and for those living with them and caring for them. So that's a great group if you happen to be in that situation. As Michael mentioned, those statistics are climbing, so more of us may find ourselves in that situation. Great kind of peer resource group. And another, when appropriate, would be 12-step resource groups and all of, and that's not only for those struggling with or having struggled with addiction, but for any of us who might be related to, either in past or present, those who have had those struggles in their lives. Even the addiction to try to control our environment, which more and more is becoming real to us, that we're not in control. We are contingent creatures. Is one thing this pandemic has brought home to us. Those groups may be helpful too. Finally, one last comment that has been mentioned before, the service to others is such a great way to connect, even when we can't physically connect. And at school, we chose during COVID to deliver pizzas to a lot of the pediatric staff and emergency staff at the local hospitals. And obviously they were quite happy to get those pizzas. But what really impressed me is how much the school community kind of lived into that simple act, and how much joy that really brought people who only read about it, but felt that they were participating in that. So that to me kind of proves that, you know, helping others, reaching out to others, as has been mentioned by other panelists, you know, is really a great way to continue to feel bonded, continue to feel purposeful, continue to feel connected. Thanks.
Thank you, James. And now let's open it up to the audience. Sharon Stoll, I think you had something important to share.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's really important to remember, well, to me, it's important to remember music and how important music and sound is, and especially to get out of a funk. Of course, I play the harp, and I'm a certified therapeutic music practitioner. And so I know the value of sound and music to the body and how our body responds, and even humming. God gave us the natural ability to soothe ourselves with humming. So that's why when we moan, it's always so comforting, because God gave us moaning. That's what that's for. It's self-soothing. So go to YouTube. There are plenty of videos where you can just put on and sing along to. Even put a DVD or a CD on, or something on your computer that you that you downloaded, and just sing along with it. So it's really important, and it really will make the difference. I'll have my computer on and be singing along with it all the time, and it really helps. It helps a lot. So you can't undervalue the power of music.
Yep, that's a great suggestion, Sharon. Ray, is that your hand up to be recognized, Ray? Or are you just?
Yeah. I had to unmute myself. Ray, Sharon's other half. I'd like to segue on what Sharon said about the music, that she prepared a tape, not a tape, but a piece for me while I was going through chemo. You know, that was a 4 or 5 hour ordeal once a week that was designed for patients undergoing chemo. And it was just wonderful how it relaxed and soothed me. So, you know, I'm definitely sold. the other thing I wanted to make a point on is Michael commented about listening when we're helping other people. And this is active listening, not shaking your head and waiting for the person to stop talking so you can throw your wisdom on top of it without really hearing what they had to say. One of my favorite mantras, if you will, was that it's, if I can do it justice, that it's no coincidence that listen is spelled with the exact same letters as silent. And if you think about that, that's pretty much says it all. To actively listen to people and address their concerns as best you can. Anyway, that's all I had to add.
Thank you, Ray. Who else would like to share? Is that you, James?
Michael, yes, it's my first time on this thing, so, I didn't know what I was doing, but no, thank you. It's really been a great experience, and I just want to add a couple of things that have been talked about and implied, but we're talking about things we can do, and I think one of the underlying themes here is, being out of control of what's happening. Something, the article that you sent me early on talking about that being out of control, and a lot of things have been emphasized that we can do to give us a sense of being in control. The thing we control most in our lives is our mind and what we think. And I think one of the things we can do to help ourselves is to control what we're thinking. The cognitive therapists have a phrase that says, no more stinking thinking. But, don't waste your time worrying about things or, agonizing over things. Think about things to do, like some of the things that have been suggested today. Donna's talking about going and helping out an elderly couple. I'll give you my address, Donna, if you want to. You're looking for another elderly couple to come and minister to. But the thing we can control most is what we're thinking about. And just to go back to that article again that I told you I thought was so good. Also to protect ourselves, to not pay too much attention to what the media is saying. I told you, I had a patient once who said his early life was an opera. Everything was in hyperbole. And a lot of the media today is an opera. It's hyperbole. I don't even watch television anymore. I read every morning. I read 5 or 6 newscasts, but I'm in control of it then. I'm not listening to somebody's opera, as it were. And just one last thing, because I thought Father Rayo's talk about the kids was just great. I would think, and I'm sure he does this, that what would I tell the parents? I'd tell them, tell the children, everything will be okay. Don't worry. The kids don't need to worry. There was it doesn't do them any good. Tell them, there was this marvelous movie a few years ago. I didn't see it because it was too sad, but it was about a guy who was in a concentration camp with a kid. And he told the kid, everything's going to be okay. Now, he knew better, but what good did it do the kid to be worried about that, It's like Mr. Rogers said, we'll all be okay in Mr. Rogers' house. So anyhow, it was a really wonderful experience, and thank you for putting it on. So that's it.
Thank you, James.
Yes.
Thank you, James. That's a beautiful movie that you're referring to. I think it's called Beautiful Life. It might be.
I don't know. Like I said, I thought it was too sad. I wasn't going to watch it. So
It was sad, but it was heroic and beautiful too. Who else would like to speak?
I would.
Who was that?
That's Leland.
Leland, there you are. There you are. I see you. Please speak.
Just to piggyback on a few things the doctor had said and some of the panel had said, I think giving back has really helped me. I go once or twice a week to Trinity Cafe, and I feed our customers, and it's just most often the most uplifting thing for me to do. So it's giving back to others, just expecting nothing in return. And so that's really, really been helpful. But most importantly, my silver lining, like Marie had said, finding silver linings. One of my silver linings was our middle son came March 13th for a wedding and just left 2 weeks ago because he stayed here. And he's a certified yoga instructor on top of his other jobs. So he taught our whole neighborhood socially distant yoga 2 and 3 times a week for the last 4 months. And it brought our community so close. It helped our mental health. Like Dr. Edgar said, be careful how you think. Well, that's how he would start off, is breathe in good thoughts, let go of your bad thoughts, and let go of your worries and your troubles. Just like you said, stop the stinking thinking. And that's really what Fletcher talked about. And so my practical tip is breathing. Even when I'm in a stressful situation, especially now, to remember Fletcher saying to breathe in for the count of 7, hold with positive thoughts, and let out as much as you can to clean your lungs. And if you do that, if you wake up in the middle of the night with stress, or in the morning, I do it every single morning for about 15 minutes, and then I meditate for 30 minutes, and it's really changed my brain. So meditation, breathing, and then Sharon, I love the music. I dance all over because I have a terrible voice. I just dance all over my house. So if there was a camera in here, I'd probably be in charter right now, but there's not. So I just dance around. So I appreciate the music. Sharon, your music is magnificent, and it is very soothing. So I think music really takes our bodies and minds to wonderful places. So thanks again.
Thank you, Leland. That was great. This is about the last call. Who else would like to speak? Maybe one last speaker? Anyone who hasn't said something that wants to say something? Is that you, Adelaide? Okay. Adelaide, let me unmute you. I can do it. Oh, sorry. Do it again, Adelaide. There you go.
I just wanted to say I love the idea about the music, that I capitalize on that. I capitalize on the pets, because I don't know what I'd do without my dog. And the other thing is, I try to think about all of the things that are happening and that tend to make me anxious, because I do get very anxious. I like to think, look ahead and say, it's provided me a gift of time to do some of the things that I've always wanted to do and just never had time for. And I've tried to actually use that time to fill that time with things that I'd put off, books that I wanted to read, but gee, I just didn't have time to get to that one. I took a course online on something that I wanted to do that I had never had time to do. So if I look at it as a gift as opposed to just a burden to carry, I think that helps.
Thank you, Adelaide. Well, let's just see if the panelists have one last thought. Kathleen, Beth, James, anything? Let's just go one at a time. Kathleen, anything that you, any word?
No, I just wanted to share a quote that I discovered, because in a different group that I'm in, we our discussion this week was about where we have found wisdom, and people had quotes from different places. And the one that I found that really impressed me was, it's a quote. It's actually a quote from Corrie ten Boom, who was the woman who survived the concentration camps in World War II. She was imprisoned for hiding Jewish people in her home. And she said, among other things, never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. And I just blew me away. I love it. The future is unknown, but we know who God is, and we can trust that.
Thank you, Kathleen. Beth, concluding thought?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've experienced such a sense of community here and gotten so much out of everything that everyone has said. And, you know, I just hope that we'll be able to spread this further because people have wonderful things to say. And I appreciate the music and the pets too.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
James, any final thought?
Sure. Likewise, music, pets, all of that, it's actually part of my own resilience. And I didn't even think about it. It's kind of a natural part of my rule of life. Wonderful, wonderful things. I guess as a final thought, which ties in a bit to what Dr. Edgar has shared and Adelaide too, is similar to Kathleen's, although not quite as elegant. I don't have a neat quote, but just the idea of, you know, thank God that I don't have to be God. I don't have to know what's going to happen. I don't have to be fully in control of anyone else's safety or experience or even my own. What this time, I think, is teaching us is what we can do and what we can't do, and to move forward in trust into that known God, even in an unknown future. So it's great to be right-sized, I think, in all this, and that I think will help keep us from becoming over anxious.
James, thank you for that. Will you offer a prayer for us as we conclude?
Sure, thank you. Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. God, you are the source of abundant life. We thank you for this time of fellowship. We thank you for your presence, which moves among us and within us. We ask you, as we go from here, for the faith of Bartimaeus, who asked for the healing he needed. We ask you for the courage of Thomas, who reached out to touch the wound of another. And we ask you for the hope of Paul, who wrote about rejoicing while constrained to a cell. As we travel this new road together, may we know that it is you walking with us and helping us through your Spirit to take this journey together, one step at a time. Amen.
Amen. This has been so good, and I'm so grateful for everyone for being here. Thank you. This is really the end of our meeting, but not the end of our journey, so I hope to see you all very soon. God bless you.
Thanks, everybody.
God bless you all.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Bye,
Thank you,
all.
everybody.
Good to see everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, Beth. Good to see you.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Beth.
Are we ending or?
We're ended. I'm just letting people say goodbye.
Okay.
See you later, Beth. Thank you, James. Bye, Miriam.